Honest. I am your host, Bobby Jarrell, and today I am joined by my buddy, Mr. Cash. So, Cash, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing all right, Bob. Just chilling. It's early Saturday morning, so just up and ready to get the day started.
So, thank you for joining me again on the podcast. Did you enjoy yourself last time?
I did. I definitely did. I'm a talker, so I like having good conversation.
So, like when I thought about the topic that we're going to talk about today, I was like, let me see if Cash wants to have this conversation with me. Now, before we get started, let's do a quick little check-in. How are you doing, like mentally? How is everything going in your world?
I mean, typical struggles. Having to reevaluate and reassess relationships that no nothing different there. Work challenges, in the process of job hunting. Thank God I'm still employed, but it's time for career change. And once you reach a certain point in your life where you feel stagnant and you want to continue to grow and evolve, it's time for you to step out and spread your wings. And so I'm in the process of looking so that I can step out and try something new so that I can flourish in other areas and other aspects of my professional life.
Yeah. Like I have one of my behavior therapists that works with my clients because I do like ABA therapy with individuals with autism. So one of the therapists, I was talking to her the other day, and she was basically saying like she got a registered behavior technician certification, and she was like, she thought she would get more money from the company, and she's like, she's not satisfied with what she's currently making, and they're not willing to pay her more, and she has a couple of years of experience, and she was like, it'll be better if she go to another company because she would definitely make more money. And so my advice was to her was, at the end of the day, I get you want to stay for the clients, you enjoy working with me, you enjoy working with other supervisors, but you got to do what's best for you. And you need to go to an environment. I would say go into an environment where you feel appreciated and compensated for your what you're bringing to the table and your experience. But if you ain't being appreciated, as long as you're getting compensated. Outside of that, like long as I'm making my money and I'm good, don't disrespect me or nothing like that. Don't do that. But as long as I'm good in that aspect, it's good. But if you're in a place where you don't feel respected, you're not getting compensated, then yeah, it's definitely time to go. But I definitely understand feeling stagnant in life. Like for me right now in my life, where I am mentally, I am fucking exhausted. Like it's like just mentally, not necessarily physically, but also like mentally, emotionally, a little spiritual, between work, school, relationship, just personal life, trying to lose weight. It's just all a lot. And like honestly, doing like the podcast and stuff, like this helps me when I'm feeling this way, and it kind of helps me to get let go of those things, even if it's just for an hour of recording, and be good to go. But I definitely understand. Once I'm done with school, I'm gonna be reevaluating I think my current position in the company that I'm with and things like that. So I get
I've been reevaluating my time there for quite some time. I mean, working in nonprofit, grant funding, things can be challenging. However, my experience and one of the things that I'm aware of, and it irks me when white folks try to insult your intelligence as a Black man. And my organization, we were a small nonprofit organization. We have now become affiliated with a larger organization, but what they did during the negotiations of this affiliation was they worked things out to benefit them.
Oh, definitely.
And who they wanted to bring to the table, and it doesn't benefit us. And so, although the majority of our staff, we're probably like 80 to 85% minority, Black and Hispanic, most people from the outside looking in would say, well, how can you say they're racist? And like I told someone recently, I was like, it's hard to point out the racism. I said, however, white folks don't understand that covert racism is done through colorism.
Yeah.
And the way that they did it, and they didn't think they don't think I'm aware but I'm aware. A lot of my other coworkers are not aware, but they done it because everybody that has a seat at the table are either white or white passing.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And so when you're aware that, when you're knowledgeable of that, and then you're aware, they don't understand, or they don't, well, no, they understand. They don't want to embrace the fact that everything that's been going on over the past, well, for the past 400 years, but more recently over the past year and 10 months, with all the racist and social injustice that's going on, that they are just as involved in that system,
Mm-hmm.
and that mentality that they portray themselves to be. And so when you call it out, then it becomes a problem. Now, I haven't verbally called it out, but in so many ways I've said some things.
Mm-hmm.
But now it's to the point to where my work ethic at this place is no longer there, because they negotiated a contract to where they can get more money.
Mm-hmm.
The people from the larger organization can come work for us, but we can't go work for them.
Mm.
Right. So now that I see that, and it's like, okay, how do you fight the system? Sometimes you got to leave the system to fight the system.
Yeah. Like I mentioned before, I do work with individuals with autism doing applied behavior analysis. I am a board certified assistant behavior analyst. I went to school specifically for this to become an assistant behavior analyst, spent a year in school paying money out of pocket for this program to get this certification. And in order to get this certification, I had to have a bachelor's degree. And now I'm in school working on my master's. And once I'm done with my master's, and I'll sit for another exam to take off the assistant, just become a board certified behavior analyst. So that's a bachelor's, one certification to do one, to get one board certified thing. And now I'm finishing up a master's program to become another, get a next step in this program, in the ladder of behavior analysis. And within this field, it is predominantly white female. Mm-hmm. And right now in the class that I'm in, we do like a cohort. So like for anybody who don't know what a cohort is, it's basically, we started the program in August of last year, and it was 20 of us when we started this program, and we all go through the program together. So each class is the exact same people every single time. And I already knew going into this that there weren't going to be many males, and there weren't going to be many black males in the program. Mm-hmm. And when I say many black males, I mean one black male. I'm the only black male in this program. And there was three males in the program, and I don't know if one guy is still in it. But my point is this: it bothers me because in the time that I've been in the field, it's pretty much been like that. I've been like one of the only black guys in the company, one of only maybe like 5 or 6 guys in the whole company. And it wasn't until I'll say maybe a semester or two ago that it started bothering me in this program, because like I'm a black, it's myself. There's a black female, and then there's maybe there's one, I don't know, either she's black, Hispanic, I'm not exactly sure, but that's about it when we look at black people in the program. And I feel so alone on the island trying to get through this program, because like there's times where something's said or something's done, and I may react to it a certain way, or I may feel a certain way about it, and there's nobody else that understands when I say something, and I'm like, fuck, like this is it's a hard feeling. And for anybody that's in school, no matter what you're doing, like what you call it, when you do like a trade school, you're doing like a trade school, working on the bachelor's, master's, PhD, whatever it is, it's already hard enough doing this. But to feel like you're alone in the process, it makes it even harder. And I feel like that's part of the issue when a black person says something. When you're working in a company, you have to get up every single day, whether you're surrounded by black people or if you're the only black person. But if there's the head of the company is predominantly white, and it's all people of color that's under them, like in that situation, it's like, goddamn, like you feel like my master. Like I'm coming to work for a master. Then like in your situations, like you saying, they telling you what you can and can't do. You can't even go somewhere to make more money because they're controlling that. And the people that don't understand, like, oh, you got a good job, you may be making a certain amount of money, but if you have somebody that's above you, that's controlling how much you can make, what you can do at a certain point in your career, like, come on now, like that's like systemic racism in a sense, because they are controlling that, and people don't understand that. In my company, worked in one company, and the supervisors in the company, they were all white female. There was maybe like a Hispanic woman or like that, whatever, but it was all female. And when I got my certification, I'm like, okay, I didn't go to school and get a bachelor's degree and go to school for another year on top of doing my bachelor's degree to get this certification for you to tell me that I can't move up. And in the ranks, you'll be a behavior therapist, then you could be an RBT, then there's BCABA, then there's BCBA, and then there's a BCBAD. And there were people that were RBTs that there's no schooling involved. You just do a 40-hour course. You do a 40-hour course, get your certificate, pass your exam, you get a certification, and that's it. There were people that were RBTs that they gave positions to. But me as a Black male BCABA who got schooling plus almost 10 years experience, you telling me there's nothing for me? And people be like, oh, well, they're still building up the company, but they made positions for other people.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, cool. But anyway, we digress. This is a good little vent session, but it leads us into what we're going to talk about. And I think it's a good segue into it. Now we're going to talk about Mr. Dave Chappelle and the recent controversy surrounding his new special on Netflix, The Closer. This is I don't know how many he did. Did he do like 4 comedy specials for Netflix? I know I've seen like at least 2.
Yeah, I think
this would be the third one.
3 or 4. Yeah.
So like this is the last one in his contract with Netflix, and he had a lot to say about the controversy of the past specials and stuff like that. And so what I want to talk about today is basically, why do people feel the way they feel about the comments, and who's right, who's wrong? Is it valid for people to feel the way they feel? And I don't know. I think I just want to have this open and honest conversation, and let's be a little too honest. Let's be completely honest. Fuck it. Let's be completely honest. Can you do that?
I can do that.
So the issue with this, I would say that some people may be offended by some of the things that we're going to say. And before we get started, I want to say, if anybody feels offended, that's your business. Oh, well, like it. And I think that's part of the problem, that people feel that because they're offended, that everybody else should be offended. Like, oh, he said this about Black people, a Black trans person, so all trans people should be offended. All Black people should stand in solidarity and stand up for what's wrong with society and what's wrong with what Dave Chappelle said. And that's where my issue lies. Like, am I a Dave Chappelle fan? Yes and no. There's things that he does that I think that are funny. Some of his jokes are funny. Yeah, of course, some of them are not funny. But that's comedy. Like, no comedian is going to get on stage and every single thing they say is going to be funny. I think the thing that I like about Dave Chappelle says stuff that people want to say, but they are afraid to say.
Right. Dave Chappelle comes from the mindset of the older generation of comedians, the Richard Pryors, the Joan Rivers, who they have filters, but they have no filters.
Yeah.
I think one of the and I agree with what Dave Chappelle said when he said he liked the older generation of LGBTQ people, because we know it's comedy. We know that comedy is supposed to push the boundaries of comfort and uncomfort.
Yeah.
Where I'm on the fence at, because I do support my Black trans brothers and sisters, is that it's unfortunate that a lot of what comedy does, it doesn't really affect white trans folk like it does Black trans folk. And the reason why is because they still get by on their whiteness.
Yeah. And
so that's where a lot of the Black trans folk have issue with, is that even his friend that he mentioned, and he gave a chance, she was a white trans person.
Mm-hmm.
And granted, he saw the comedian in her, but she still gets by on her white. She still got by on her whiteness.
Mm-hmm.
So as much as he wants to try to like sugarcoat it or like say, well, that's my trans friend. I have a trans friend, so I'm not transphobic. His trans friend still benefited from a privilege that Black trans folk don't benefit from.
Mm-hmm.
And then also there's tokenism that comes into play. You know what I'm saying? When you have your one or two trans friends, like that doesn't necessarily mean that you're not transphobic because you connect with them on a different level outside of their trans identity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's through the art of comedy, which you should get to know them for that art and for that gift and that talent that they have, and then see them because that's a part of who they are. And with you being in that career, you get to relate to them on that level. But don't use that relationship with this person who just so happened to be trans as your justification as to why you're able to say what you say.
So okay, and we shared a few videos. Trying to find which one it was. I'll think about it. The thing that I'm puzzled with is Dave Chappelle is known for making these, what's the word? I don't want to say rude jokes. These kind of crude, very vulgar jokes that some people can consider as being disrespectful. And when I say it, I'm not saying that a person is wrong for feeling the way they feel when somebody says something or whatever. Like, your feelings are valid. How you feel when something is done and it affects you, that's your feelings, and I respect that. If another person feels completely different, then that respect how I feel. If I say, hey, I'm not offended or whatever. Now, what I've heard from, like, let's say the Hope Giselle, do you know which? So like I follow her on I think TikTok, and like I enjoy her content because I think she's extremely smart. I feel like she has a lot of valid points. The issue that I say I have with her is in the video that you sent me, we talked about she talked about like exactly what you were saying about Daphne that he talked about in his special.
Right.
It's almost like she's kind of discrediting what Daphne's experience was as a white trans person, as a white male. And I think that we get to the point where we're so focused on the Black experience, what I've been through as a Black person, as a trans person or whatever, that we don't find the commonalities between certain things.
Exactly.
Now, like I agree with what you said, but what I'm confused about is if a person says something, let's say an example, if I say I don't like Asian people and all Asian people say, oh, well, screw him, I'm going to cancel Bobby Jarrell and everything that he does. But then I have let's say I have a Hispanic person that comes and says, oh, well, I'm going to embrace Bobby Jarrell because I've connected with him on this level.
Right.
But then how can Hispanic people get upset because I've connected with, no, did I mess that up? Asian. How can the Asian people get upset because I've connected then with the Hispanic person instead of connecting with them? Now, we can say, yeah, you hate people, but as a person, we have to learn sometimes, and we have to be willing to educate people. Some people aren't willing to educate people. But what my point is this: for the Black, gay, LGBT, trans people that say they don't like Dave Chappelle because of what Dave Chappelle said, but then they get upset because he's connected with this white person. How many of them have actually said, instead of me canceling Dave Chappelle, how about we try to have a conversation with Dave Chappelle? How can we understand what he's doing, what he's saying, instead of just saying, okay, I'm just going to cancel him? Because then you get upset because he's connected with the white trans person and be like, oh, that doesn't count. Like that, you can't base your whole opinion of a trans person just because it is one white person when y'all canceled me. Y'all said y'all didn't want nothing to do with me. Y'all tried to end my career because you didn't like what I said instead of trying to bridge that gap and break down those walls. Do you get what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I get what you're saying, and one of the things that comes to mind when I think about it is we all have our own agendas, and Black trans folk, especially trans women, and trans women of color, their agenda is that they have been fighting to be seen, respected, heard, and just want the human right and human decency just to exist without harm and without threat. Now, I mean, if you don't like them, you don't like them. That's solely your choice and your decision. But like as we all know, granted, we have our challenges as Black men, even as Black gay men, dealing with racism. However, we're still able to walk down the street, and the likelihood of us being bothered by somebody of another race is a lot lower than a trans person, let alone a Black or a brown trans person. So I understand their agenda. I get their, because I correlate their agenda to any other experience that we as Black folk have. Do the thing that I think the biggest thing for us as just people in general to understand is we put so much, these celebrities have a platform.
Yeah.
We put so much responsibility on these celebrities to use their platform to create change. And it's unfortunate that certain platforms are not meant to create change in a certain way. And so, and right, hold on. And so with that being said, it's not, I mean, it kind of is Dave Chappelle's responsibility, but then again, it's not Dave Chappelle's responsibility to filter out his art, because that's his art. But it's us as individuals who are consumers of this art form of comedy, and who love and appreciate and respect the art form of comedy, to be mature about what we're hearing, and to not take it in a literal sense. Because what they're saying, what Hope Giselle was saying was that those comments don't translate to certain people, that causes them to act out maturely towards trans women of color. And so they take comments like that, and they use those comments to see trans women of color a certain way and to treat them a certain way. And I hear it a lot, where a lot of people, Black queer folk, cisgender straight Black women, make comments where they need to stop tricking people. And that's not really their reality. A lot of them are not tricking anybody. What it is a lot of these men that are dealing with trans women become insecure about their relations or their relationship with these trans women. And so they want it in closet, and they want it in the closet. But as soon as their doors open, and others that they socialize or associate with see what they're doing behind the doors, then they want to attack this marginalized community. And so that's what Black and brown trans women are fighting for, is the comments that cisgender Black men are making in regards to just trans women in general. It affects them differently than it affects white trans women. They're not oblivious to white trans women's experience. What they're saying is that white trans women have it a little bit easier than than trans women of color.
So, like, I personally don't know Dave Chappelle. Like, I've never met the man a day in my life. If he ever saw my work and he want to work with me, I'll definitely work with him. Maybe the trans community might cancel me then. I'm not big enough to be canceled as of yet. Look, maybe like in 5 years, if I blow up, then they're gonna see this video and be like, oh, let's cancel him because of what he said in 2021. But okay. In class the other day, my professor was talking about we're talking about like experiments and stuff like that. And he brought up the person who discovered penicillin. So with this person discovering penicillin, he wasn't trying to discover penicillin. He was working on a completely different experiment. And through that process, he said, oh, I don't know if it's red mushrooms or something like that. He was like, oh, these red mushrooms are killing bacteria. And through that, not a mistake, but just a finding that he found throughout doing a different experiment, he realized that, oh, this could be potentially a good thing for the world, while making this not a mistake, but just something that happened in the process of doing a different experiment. Now, I think it was, I don't know what's her name. It was like IY Neezy or something like that.
Leneezy.
Leneezy, L-Y or I-Y?
Yeah.
Okay, so Leneezy. So in her video, she mentioned that basically saying that Dave Chappelle should rise above his thinking to, I guess, learn more about the community and be more mindful of the things that he says and how it can impact society. So in the videos, like interviews and things that I've listened to Dave Chappelle speaking, and people accredit him for being this deep thinker, like a philosopher in a sense. And I don't think Dave Chappelle went into any of his specials thinking, oh, I'm just going to say this to get a laugh. I'm going to say this to try to put down this community. I'm going to say these things because I know it's going to cause an uproar. I think what he said was, these things are things that need to be said. And in order for people to start to do exactly what she said that he should do, there has to be some type of disruption in society. And in order to do this, if you have the platform that you have, and he knows his platform, he knows what he can do. So in that, I think that's what he had in mind when he went into doing these specials. Now, like Hope and even Leneezy, I don't think they're looking at it in that aspect. Now, some of the stuff he said, it was a little kind of made me like clutch my pearls a little bit. But look at what's come from this. Look at the platform that Hope Giselle is now on, being able to do an interview on the news. Like if Dave Chappelle hadn't have said the things that he said, you wouldn't be able to sit right here and speak your truth as a Black trans female. So it's like, even though you don't like what he said, you may not like how it was said, but he's opened up the doors for you to be able to have the conversations that you're currently having.
Yeah. And I think that was part of the agenda, because from what he said in the closer was that people were upset at him for what he said in a previous special.
Yeah.
And so his I think, from me watching it, I think his motive and his agenda in this special was to, because as Leneezy said, he's always been forward thinking. He's methodical in his comedy. So this particular special was well thought out. Yeah. But I'm not saying, but I don't think it was, me personally, I don't think it was thought out in a completely malicious way.
Yeah, I agree.
Can I say that he's transphobic? I'm not gonna say that because I don't know. I have met Dave Chappelle. I don't know him personally, but I've met him. His mother used to work. She used to run our Berlinga Black Cultural Resource Center at my university, and he used to come visit his mom periodically. And so when I was a student employee of that center and a student volunteer, there's been a couple of times where I've escorted him into his mom's office and said hello and a few words, and then that was it. Because him being the celebrity that he is, he didn't want all that type of attention, so he would come through the back, get escorted up, go into her office, and sit there, and we try to minimize the amount of exposure he got to the campus, so that people wouldn't be all up in his face trying to get autographs, trying to have conversations, trying to have pictures and all that. But I think he was methodical in his content for this particular special. I think it was one to bring to start conversations around it. But then two, I also think that he is an advocate for his craft. And just like you have the Hope Giselles and the Lenise, even though Lenise is not a trans woman, she is a Black woman who her purpose is to educate. And I follow her on Instagram, and I love her content because she's thought provoking. But just like they're advocates for what they believe in and what they stand for, he's an advocate for his craft. And I think as a comedian with such a strong, as a Black comedian with such a strong voice, I think this special, and he said it, that he was like, this is going to be my last special for a while. I think comedians are tired of being censored.
Yeah.
I think comedians are tired of having their voices muted and being told what to do and how to do in their jokes.
Yeah.
He's not a new generation comedian. And so like they don't, back then they didn't have many filters, or they didn't have to think about or be concerned about how people felt, because they knew that their stuff was going to push the boundaries of comfort and discomfort.
Yeah.
And so for him and any other comedian to come and now be in an era in time and in our existence where comedy has to be filtered, I'm sure as we talked about earlier, with our experiences on our jobs and being looked at as if we're less intelligent, or they're insulting our intelligence and not giving us the opportunity to eat like everybody else gets the opportunity to eat. That's what he's experiencing. He's experiencing it. Like, how dare you? The one thing that made us who we are is the one thing that you're trying to take away from us.
Yeah. And I think like when it comes to like what's going on right now, and then people wanting for his special to be taken down from Netflix, it's like as Black people, we get into this mindset of, if you're not for us, if you're a Black person, you're against one issue that's in the Black community, you're not Black. You don't support Black people. But at the end of the day, when we look at so many of the issues that are going on, and people could be like, oh, well, Black people are killing each other every day, then a white person gets killed, and oh, it's a big issue. But it's like, what about the Black people that are killing each other? And I think that's a real issue, but are we really speaking up about it as much as we should? When we see George Floyd getting killed by a white person, or Breonna Taylor getting killed in her own house by a white cop, then we speak out. We want to protest. We want to do all those things, but within our own community. And I can say, like, in like the community where I'm from in Louisiana, Raceland, Louisiana, like, it's a small town, but when the amount of killing that goes on, it's ridiculous. And when it comes to, I can't remember which one of the videos that he said, but we talk about like how Dave Chappelle says the baby killed somebody, and that's not a big issue.
That was the closer.
In the closer. I know that. In the closer. But it's like when they say, when it's a trans person, then everybody's upset. Or like the LGBT community, everybody's upset. Yep. And so it's like, then we got Black LGBT people that are saying, oh, well, what about the Black trans people? Like, you're not speaking up about us. Like, what about protecting us? But if, let's say, just the LGBT, if they want to speak up, and I'm saying they as if I'm not LGBTQ, but like if the LGBT community is going to stand up and say, I don't like this what's being said, I'm going to protest, I want this to come down, then another community, if it's just we're going to separate white LGBT from Black LGBT, the Black LGBT can't get upset because they're not taking the same protest. They're not willing to stand up the same way that this community is standing up. Or if we're gonna, the same way that they're standing up, we have that choice. We can do that, but we don't want to do it. We want to get on and say, oh, I don't like the way they said this, but how are we standing up in order to to get the same response that these other people are getting. And it's like, I'm confusing myself by even saying this, because it's like, within this struggle, like with Hope was saying, it's like she's separating the struggle of this white trans person from this black trans person. Like, oh, well, they did this and they got like, oh, Dave Chappelle helped this person. You can go get the same help. It may be harder for you to get it, but you can get it. So you can make it seem like, oh, he only helped her because she black. I mean, because she was white. Like, how can we stand up and, instead of complaining about the results that other people are getting, how about we stand up and say, okay, I want the same results. What do I have to do? My struggle may be 10 times harder, but I got to be willing to get up, and I need to be willing to fight for it. And then, like, we break it down into like the black community. Like, black people want to fight when it's against a white cop, but what about fighting against black on black crime within our communities?
Right, and that's one of the things that I love this correlation. When we get cut, we can easily mend a scab, or we can easily tend to a cut a flesh wound, and then it'll scab over. What we're not always aware of is the illnesses that and the infections that go on inside the body, that we're having minor signs telling us that something's wrong. Well, unfortunately, in our community, as black and brown folk, this is not a minor sign. Black on black crime is not a minor sign. We know that it exists. It exists on a daily basis. It happens every second. It's easier to point, and this is just a human thing. It's easier to point out what somebody else do to our community than it is for us to deal with what's going on in our own community.
Yeah.
Because it's like, okay, we accept what we do to each other, but we don't want to accept what somebody else do to us. Like, we accept what we accept cisgender black men degrading black women and black trans women in their music, but we don't want to accept white folks appropriating our art and our music and making it and making it their own, and pushing us out, whitewashing us out. And if they did the same thing to a black woman, then there's an issue.
Yeah.
We do have to heal those wounds within. Even within the LGBTQ community, because
like with that,
trans women do in reality, like in what I've witnessed, trans women do get shitted on by gay men, by black gay men.
Yeah. Okay. And so vice versa. I ain't gonna say vice versa, because I don't have the data to back up what I'm saying. So I saw I think it was on Twitter, T.S. Madison made a post saying that she didn't like that she was against the Dave Chappelle special, and she admitted that she hadn't watched the special. And she was like, but nope, like, we got to stand up to this, and we can't keep allowing this. But then I don't know when the time frame between that post and a different post, but I saw a different post where she shared someone sent her a comment in her inbox, and I think it was a gay black male, and like, she called him like a punk and all this stuff in her post. And I'm like, how is that okay? You got an issue with somebody talking bad down as you as a LGBT person, as a black trans woman, but it's okay for you to then turn around and say, call a black male a punk and all this. But like, let's say if it was like a black LGBT person got killed in the streets by like hate crime, then everybody wants to scream this, that, and the other. But it's like, we need to make sure that we're holding ourselves accountable within our community. And I understand, I think the thing that I was thinking about with Dave Chappelle also was, if a person doesn't like a trans person, black, white, whatever, that's okay. like, we don't have to like every single person, but it's our actions. How do we treat people? Like, if you don't like a person, don't treat them bad. You don't treat them at all. And I feel like that's part of the issue that some people are having is like they're saying, if you're a black male, whatever, or even a black female, you have to be respectful of this black trans person. You have to like this black trans person. You have to accept this black trans person. But I don't. Right. And I'm not saying me, I'm not saying like I don't accept it, but I'm saying like as a person, you don't have to like everybody. You don't have to accept everybody. But that doesn't mean that you treat them bad. That don't mean that you disrespect them. And I think that that's part of the issue. Now, when you say Dave Chappelle, like you said, you met him, but you don't know if he's transphobic or not. And people are basing what they think of Dave Chappelle off of these specials, but they don't know Dave Chappelle in reality. And I think, like you said earlier, we're putting too much face value on what he's saying in these specials. And if you think about a comedian, or even like actors, musicians, singers, whatever, these are not these people's, this is not their life. Like, just because they get on stage and tell a joke, that don't mean that that's who they are off stage. They're getting on stage and they're saying these things to get a laugh, to get an uproar. But society is saying, oh, you said this, so that must be how you feel. You rap this in one of your songs, so this must be what you really mean. And like we talk like Cardi B, when it's like people like talking about Cardi B's music and things like that. Yeah, she may be a little wild, a little rough around the edges. But do you think that that's how she living her day-to-day life when she's at home? Like, I doubt it. And I feel like we're getting so caught up on thinking that this is what these people are, just because they said it in these specials.
Right. Well, I also think that we have to mature to a place to where we're not always seeing people from where they come from or what we think they come from, and see them for where they're at as well. Yeah. There is like we had, like, for instance, Steve Harvey, for example. Steve Harvey, born in North Carolina, grew up in Cleveland, Ohio. You know what I'm saying? He was an old school comedian. Very like raw, multiple marriages. But then look at Steve Harvey now. And so, like, a lot of people they try to discredit his relationship advice because of his previous relationship history. I saw that. And so it's like, okay, everybody gets stuck and fixated on where a person comes from, or what a person been through, or what a person used to be. And we don't give a person a chance to grow, mature, and evolve into who they are today, or who they will become in the future. And so we're so quick to cancel them from where they at, instead of giving them the opportunity to mature and to grow. Yeah. And it's unfair to that individual. It's unfair to the entertainment industry. But we ourselves want that same privilege, or that same opportunity to have the space and the liberty to be seen for where we're at. And also we want people to, you know what I'm saying, invest in where we're going or where we want to be. And I think that that's the thing with Dave Chappelle's friend that he mentioned. I think her name was Daphne. Yeah, Daphne. And like Hope Giselle's opinion about that situation. Dave Chappelle saw Daphne where she was. Yes, he was aware of her trans. He was more likely aware of her trans identity. But Dave Chappelle saw her where she was. He saw her as a budding comedian trying to find her way. And somebody gave him a chance. He gave her a chance.
But even with that, I'll say, like, and people saying like, oh, because Daphne accepted him, that doesn't mean that everybody should accept him. Daphne is different because she's this white female. But Daphne gave him a chance also. Yeah, right. He had more to give to Daphne, but Daphne also allowed him. She saw him where he was as well and said, okay, this black comedian, someone who I respect and I look up to, yeah, he's making some jokes, he's saying some things, but I have to understand that this man, he doesn't have the experience, he hasn't had the exposure to a trans person, black, white, Asian, whatever. He hasn't had the exposure. So of course he's going to say some things that are going to be a little disrespectful, that may be a little off-putting to me, but I have to meet this person where he is. So in order for him to...
But we don't know if he had the exposure or not, because they keep in mind, it's the entertainment industry.
Well, yeah.
And don't be remiss that a lot of some of the groupies are trans women. And with that, some of these men are aware that these trans women are part of their groupie circuits. And so I wouldn't go on to say that she didn't know that, because he also gave let comedian Flame Monroe open up for him. So Flame Monroe is a trans comedian from Chicago, and she's old school. So she got that raw, know what I'm saying, you need to toughen up, you too fucking sensitive type of mentality in regards to this situation, in comparison to the Hope Giselles, the T.S. Madisons, and I forgot the other young lady name, who they did an Instagram live where they were talking about this whole situation. But she comes from that old school, and like in contrast, like she has a different mentality in contrast to where Hope Giselle and what Lanisi said, that like, okay, what did she say? That when you are a person, like you're the only black man in the room and you're around a whole bunch of white folks and they use the word nigga. And what she was saying is that, like, okay, you may sweep it under the rug because you are benefiting from that relationship, or you benefit from being in that space. So you may allow your friend, and that's why a lot of white folks who use the word nigga say, well, it's in your music and we listen to your music, or my black friends let me say it, like I don't, have you ever seen the Miss Pat show?
No, I've seen just clips of it. I've never watched the actual show.
There was an episode on the Miss Pat show where their son, their youngest son, had two friends. One was a white Latin American. He was a Latin American boy who was white passing, and then he had a white friend, and they was gonna use the word nigga, and his father got completely upset to the point to where, like, he was disappointed in his son. And they had to have a conversation as to why the father was disappointed versus why the young man was so, like, accepting of it or affirming of it. And we have to understand that we come from two different generations. Like Dave Chappelle and a lot of trans come from totally different generations. And so plus, like, totally different mentalities.
Yes.
Like the mentality then, like with Flame Monroe being in her, I think, late 50s, mid to late 50s. Come from a totally different generation where, like, you had to have tougher skin and like in order to maneuver the streets of our country. You had to be rough, even in our queerness or in our gayness. There was no way I could walk down the streets of Cincinnati, Ohio in 1995 at 14 years old and be as flamboyant as a 14-year-old can today.
Yeah. So I think with that, like, it goes back to what I was saying about the exposure, because Dave Chappelle came from this old school style of comedy, and just like his, and I think he was raised in a suburb, so he didn't grow up in like the hood or anything like that. No, but
he was born in Yellow Spring. He was born in Yellow Springs, Ohio, which is right outside of Dayton, Ohio.
Okay.
Where I went to college at.
So like with that, because he grew up in that time frame and was exposed to these type of people that had a tougher skin. Now, like when I say being like Daphne, coming in contact with Daphne, because Dave Chappelle is used to saying what he wants to say and that being okay to him, when you meet somebody new, like now, everybody's like, oh no, he said that. Let's cancel him. But instead, like I say, meeting somebody where they're at and being able to say, okay, I get it. This is what you grew up doing. This is the style of comedy that you've done. I'm not gonna get offended. I'm gonna tell you how I feel about what you said. And instead of putting you down, like I'm gonna show you that just because you feel this way, that doesn't mean that's who I am. That doesn't mean that your words can stop me from doing what I want to do. And when we talk about like the connection that he had with Daphne, I think that's the type of people that Dave Chappelle needs. He needs somebody that's going to be able to say, okay, you're going to say some crazy ass shit to me. You're going to say something about me, then I'm going to say something about you. And I'm going to show you that I'm no less than what you are. Mm-hmm. But then we got the people like, I'm not saying like anything about Hope Giselle, because I think she's an amazing person. Like I don't know her personally, but at the same time, I think she's an amazing person. But we have to stop. And I'm not saying it's like she's playing like victim mentality or anything like that, but we can't get upset every time somebody says something. Like if they say something, you come back and show that I'm just as good as you. I may even be better than you, and I'm not going to be upset just because you said what you said. And I feel like that's what so many people are doing. They're getting upset about what was said instead of trying to use this to strive forward. Like use this as an opportunity to speak and get your voice out there. And they're doing that. They're doing that in a sense, but also.
Go ahead.
So I want to talk. Okay, like we said, like you mentioned earlier, like the token friend, and so like having that token black friend, token trans friend. How many trans people do you personally know?
Who, me? Mm-hmm. I know several. Some personally and some not so personally, but I've been in spaces with them. You understand, I worked in the HIV/AIDS service organization in New York. Mm-hmm. And the organization that I worked for, GMHC, which it was one of the first and it's the oldest HIV/AIDS service organization in existence, and still amongst one of the largest. We worked a lot with the LGBTQ community, and more particularly the ballroom community. And trans folk are very, they are the pioneers of that community. Mm-hmm. And so because they are the pioneers of that community, I was always around trans folk, and mostly trans women, but also some trans men. And so I am, and that's where I got my exposure. Okay. And that's where I was able, and I'm grateful for the trans folk that I came across that gave me the space and permission to ask questions, to learn and understand. And not that I was disrespectful to trans folk, because I wasn't disrespectful to trans folk by any means, but I am one, and not everyone is like me. Not everyone wants to learn to understand. Some people just don't want to know it all, and that's their prerogative. I want to learn to understand so that I can be, because like, how can I say I'm an educator and want to educate somebody on new information if I don't know myself? Yeah. And so like and I don't, what if you are familiar with the ballroom community and like individuals in the ballroom scene, especially the New York ballroom scene, like you'll know that like trans women are very prevalent and very dominant in that scene.
So with that, it's like you said a few things. For me, how many trans people do I personally know? My answer would be none. Like I do not personally know any trans people. Like I had a couple of years ago, I had a friend of mine who I would hang out with, go over to his house and chill and stuff. He had him and his roommate, they had a close friend who was trans female. And that was the first time that I was actually in the same space, like outside of like a club or something like that. Like sitting on the couch, enjoying some smokery and having drinks, laughing and stuff like that. And I hung out in that space with this person a few times, maybe like 3 or 4 times. But outside of that, like and it's been years, I don't even remember her name. But outside of that, I don't have that exposure to the trans community. I grew up in, like I said, Raceland, Louisiana, a little small town, and we didn't have any gay clubs. Like the closest gay club was in New Orleans, which was by like maybe 40 minutes away from my house. And even back then, like the trans community was not as prevalent as it is right now. So as a gay Black male, I don't have the same exposure that you have as a gay Black male. There may be somebody else.
I didn't have that. I didn't have that growing up.
Well, no, I'm saying, I'm saying even now. I'm saying like even now in your life, from in the last 10 years that you've had, when you actually at some point in your life you got exposure. And so with that, like you said that when you finally had the opportunity to actually meet somebody that's trans within that environment, you asked questions. You got to know them on a deeper level in a sense, right?
Well, because I was also going to be working with that population. So like how can I help a community or a segment of a community that I'm not familiar with?
So, but with that, my point is this. Before that, you ain't know anything about trans people. You didn't understand. Did you? And even as a gay Black male, there's times where I say, for me, would I want to be a female? I don't want to be a female. Like I don't even want to do drag. I might do drag like once in my life because I thought about doing it for Halloween. But before going into the gay community, before having being in a space where trans people were, I didn't understand it. And even now, at 35 years old, there's times where I'm like, I don't understand how a person can say, I feel I'm in the wrong body. But like I said earlier, guess what? It ain't for me. It ain't for me to understand because it ain't my experience.
But correlated to your experience, how did you know that you were gay?
Are you asking me how I knew?
Yeah.
So I remember I was like a kid, right? I was a kid, and I was at my aunt had a snowball stand, and I remember I was standing there ordering my snowball, and I'm at the window and I'm leaning against the railing. And this guy that lived in my community, he was standing like maybe a foot in front of me. He was just standing in front of me. And my body started doing things. I'm like, why the fuck do I feel the way that I feel? Like a part of me, like I just wanted to reach out and touch it. I'm like, this something ain't right here. And it's like I knew deep down inside I was different. Now, what I'm saying is. So
hold on. Take that same mentality and that same experience and correlate that with the trans experience.
I get that. I get that 100%.
That's all it is.
And I get that. I get that. What I'm saying is because like a lot of people in society, like you mentioned earlier, what was it? You said I don't know if you were talking about like with Hope and them. Like them being able to take their own experience, like just basically saying, this is my experience, this is how I feel, other people should understand, other people should be able to relate, but that's not the case. So it's just like let's say I knew what I was feeling, right? But at the same time, I couldn't imagine myself saying, oh, I want to be a woman. Like I don't know what that feels like, so I can't relate to that particular feeling, but I can respect that that's how they feel because that's their experience. And it ain't just like it's not my experience to tell a person, hey, I'm gay, so you should know what this feels like because I felt it. No, they don't understand. They ain't never did it. They ain't never been through it. That's perfectly fine. And I feel the same way when it comes to like trans people. Like I don't understand it, but it ain't my place to understand it.
This is how I explain it. Have you ever throughout your existence ever felt like there was something different about you?
Yeah, definitely.
That's how I explain the trans experience. Don't try to think of, because if we think of it in terms of their trans identity and and their transition, instead of thinking of it in terms of like what society says we should and how society said we should feel and how we should be versus how we feel inside. Do we feel different than what they say I should feel? And that and in essence, that's how you can relate to the trans experiences, that they felt different than how society said they should feel. And just like us as gay men.
But see, I think the issue with that is a lot of people that would be considered as maybe empathy, right? So a lot of people don't know how to empathize. They don't know how to say, okay, your experience is different from mine, but let me try to understand why you're feeling the way that you're feeling. And I think that what I'm saying is, well, we're saying the same thing. Like, I don't want you to think I'm disagreeing with you.
No, I know we are.
But what I think people need to get out of this mindset of trying to understand. You don't have to understand why a person feels the way they do. You don't have to understand why they do the things they do. You just need to respect their choices. And I feel like that's where like society, as like say like Black males have an issue with trans people because like they don't understand this and they don't agree with this, but it's like, it ain't your place to agree with it.
But there's a difference between understanding and agreeing. Yeah. If a person wants to understand, then yes, that's their place to want to understand. They don't necessarily have to agree. However, I also think that we don't know, we're not always the best communicators in what we're going through and how to articulate some people are. Hope Giselle is able to articulate her experience to where people may be able to grasp a greater understanding than someone else. But going back to a point you said before, in regards to trans folk should be educators. Hope Giselle said no, what you alluded to, but Hope Giselle said you said something about like giving a person the opportunity to learn or to educate.
Okay, I know,
Hope Giselle said, she made a very valid point, and she correlated to the Black experience during the civil rights times. Advocacy looks totally different. Advocacy comes in many ways. We have to there has to be a yin and a yang. You have your more passive activists who are not as assertive or aggressive about their advocacy in regards to the trans movement. You have your more aggressive advocates. Advocacy works when you have that balance, when you got your Martin Luther Kings and your Malcolm X's. And she used both of them in her position, is that she's more of a Malcolm X. She's more of that aggressive, I'm gonna put it in your face, I'm gonna let you know, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. But then you have those T.S. Madisons who's like, look, I'm not in those what's her name? She actress.
Laverne
Cox and the Janet Mox, they're not going to be so aggressive and so vocal. They'll stand up and they'll protest, but they're not going to be so aggressive and so vocal about trans rights, because you have to have that balance. And I think that's Hope Giselle's place in her fight, in their fight, is that she is amongst that radical movement of trans rights.
Yeah. And like so much is going through my head right now. Okay, let me see where I want to start. So going back to what I was saying, when you mentioned that a token friend, that having a token trans person. Now, when I talk about like the exposure, if a person hasn't had that exposure, then their knowledge is limited. Now, hopefully they're willing to go in it. They're going to probably have, they're going to have like some preconceived notions. They're going to have their own opinion based off their inexperience and their not having the exposure. So if it takes having that one trans person, let's say a white trans friend, to allow you that opportunity to say, okay, yeah, I have one trans friend. This is the knowledge that I have from about this community is based on the knowledge that I've gained from this one white trans friend. Now, when I talk about being able or being willing to educate people, it doesn't matter how you do it. Like you can do it in the sense of, hey, I'm gonna sit you down and I'm gonna talk to you about this experience. I want to teach you how to do it, or you can do it in the way that Hope Giselle does it. Like that's the reason why I followed her on TikTok, is because of the way she does it. Like she talks about it from a personal experience, and she does it in a very entertaining and educational way, and I enjoy that. Now, I think that some people, when it comes to like this cancellation culture, people are saying, oh no, you said this, I'm going to cancel you, instead of saying, okay, let me educate you a little bit better. And let me teach you a little something, instead of just saying, I'm going to cancel you because of that. Now, like my mom, when my mom found out that I was a homosexual, my mom's like, I'm done. Like, I ain't got nothing to say to you, this, that, and the other. But before that, she's been around gay people. She knew gay people. Like she knew they existed. But once it was actually in your home, you have personal. It's like, damn, now it's like you say, it's personal. And but it took my mom a while to get to the point where she's at right now. Like my partner, like me and my partner been together, it'll be 7 years in January. When I talk to my mom, she's asking me about him. If like when she was here for a couple of weeks, like after the hurricane in Louisiana, and she was here, she's like, she cooking food. You come and get y'all some food, or I'm gonna make y'all some chicken salad. It ain't about me. It's about us. And my mom found out 18, 19 years ago. 18 years ago. That's when my mom found out that I was a homosexual. 18 years ago.
Oh, from then. Quite some time.
Huh?
You was a homosexual for a long time.
Baby, when my daddy spit me out, and I went when I went up that canal, like that's when I knew. That's when I knew. But it's like rainbow. The thing is, like, mom, if I would have canceled my mom back then, and I think that's what a lot of people do within the gay community, and I think that's what made us, and I'll say us, like I wasn't fighting in Stonewall and stuff like that, but I think like back then what made the community so strong is because they had to be strong. Like these were people, like as soon as the family said, no, I'm disowning you, I don't appreciate this life, I don't respect this lifestyle, I don't agree with it, you're on your own. And right now, like with my mom, if I would have done that 18 years ago, I don't know where I would be right now. I don't know where she would be, but being able to say, okay, yeah, that first couple of months, that first year, 2-3 years, it was hard. And for a while, it's like, it wasn't that she like just automatically accepted it. She started to learn over time that I was still the same person. Because one of the things she asked me when I first came out, she was like, oh, what, you want to be a woman? Like, no, that doesn't mean I want to be a woman. It just means that I'm attracted to men. That's what being gay means. That yes, in 18 years ago, I didn't understand trans. But my point is, like, we have to be, like you said, we have to give people time to learn. We have to give them time to grow, because you can meet a person in a space where they are right now, and they may not be ready for that. And now, and I've been making my notes, so they're kind of all over the place, so forgive me. What I want to talk about Kevin Hart. So about maybe 2 years ago or so, like they brought up some tweets that Kevin Hart made years before that. They wanted to cancel Kevin Hart at that point for something he did years ago. Instead of saying, okay, has he grown? Has he learned? Has he had more exposure? And when I say exposure, it's not necessarily saying, oh, I'm in a space with gay people, I've worked with gay people. It's a difference from saying I'm around them and I actually know them. I know their experience. I know this person personally. And so that's what helps us connect on a deeper level, when we actually be able to say, I know this person, this is their story because they've shared it with me, and I've allowed myself to be vulnerable enough to let this person into my space. Now I can accept this one person, but by accepting that one person, that opens the door to say, okay, maybe I'll give this other gay person a chance. So you meet this other gay person.
But also you got to think about it too, though. That's the entertainment industry. To say that they're not exposed to gay folk is to be lying to ourselves.
But that's the thing, and when they say like, they may be in the same space. They may be in the same space, but have they actually sat down and had those type of conversations.
But and that's the thing though, we don't know. But however, do you not think that when you work with someone or some people for so long, because they've been a part, like we as queer men or we as gay men, we have been styling, designing, coaching a lot of these artists and entertainers to be the people that they are, to make them flourish and make them grow. So so we are ingrained in the persona that people see on television. Now, do you not think, and I'm not saying that they're having like these exact conversations, but do you not think that over the course of time, they haven't taken the opportunity to at least get to know something about those individuals that they're working with or that are working for them? Because they know.
But see, I think that it depends on the person. It depends on the situation, the environment. So like as a gay Black man, if I'm working on, let's say, the Dave Chappelle show, however long the show was out again, however long ago the show was out, if I know that this is a culture of homophobia and transphobia, as a Black man, I'm not going to go in, a gay Black man, I'm not going to go into this environment and say, hey, I'm a gay Black man, somebody need to talk to me. Bitch, I'm going in, I'm going to do my job. Right. At the end of the day, like, I'm not trying to rock the boat because I know this environment. And I feel like we've also been very conformative of our environments as well. And that's like with the Hope Giselles and the other person, like it's great that they're using their platforms to, I would say, try to cancel people, but instead of canceling them, say like with Laverne Cox, what they do, instead of saying, oh, you don't have trans people on television, that's fine, I'm gonna go find me another show and I'm gonna put myself on this show so that you can see me front and center. So I think I'm not saying that they weren't exposed. I'm not saying that they didn't have conversations. They may have had great conversations, but how deep were the conversations? How much did they allow themselves to actually get to know these people? And I know we got to wrap up also, I'm sorry. But I think that that's part of, that's what I'm saying. Like the exposure is more so, let's not just have a roundabout conversation. Let's actually talk about it. But people have to be in a space where they're ready to have that conversation. They have to be willing and open to receive what they're going to hear, because it's going to go against a lot of what they believe, a lot of what they were taught, a lot of what they think of people.
It's going to challenge a lot of ideologies. Now, however, this would be my question. Do you think Dave Chappelle is at a place in his life where he is open, ready, and cares to have this type of dialogue?
Yes, I think so.
and that's the thing. And that would be the next step. And like you said, like it's an opportunity, because he created an opportunity for Hope to get more visibility.
Yes.
And so like now it's an opportunity, because going back to the baby situation, and when T.I. made his comments, and T.I. and Boosie, and then they brought on what's his name from Wild 'N Out,
Nick, or
no, they brought out what's his name, live in Atlanta, always shaking it, and people had an issue with him speaking on behalf of the Black gay community in regards to T.I.'s statement, and like, what is his name? Shit.
He gay?
Yeah, he gay. He always twerk. Every Friday he used to do a twerk video on Instagram.
Zoe.
Yeah, Zoe. And so people were complaining because they knew that T.I. intentionally brought him on to have a conversation about the baby situation and gay men, so that they can overtalk him and continue to emasculate him as a Black man. And even his statements in regards to his dating preference brought him under more scrutiny, and people wanted to cancel him. But that wasn't an opportunity where T.I. invited someone to the table that can educate him. or educate them. That was the opportunity to say, we go tokenize this young Black pseudo celebrity or celebrity, because I don't want to call him pseudo because he's not he's an actual known person. But we go tokenize this individual and leverage the bit of ignorance that we know that he have in regards to his own community and his own experience.
Yes.
And we're gonna exploit that to benefit us and our point.
Yes. Yeah.
And but I do think that I don't think that Dave Chappelle will be the type of individual that would do that. I don't think he would be the type of individual that would bring on someone who can't articulate their point to a place to where he can understand.
Yeah.
Now, do I think there's others that would? Hell yeah. Because that's what they do. They like to exploit Black ignorance over Black intelligence.
Yeah, definitely.
Because it continues to depict us in the way that they've always wanted to see us, because it's a challenge and we're a threat when we show anything outside of our ignorance. That's why reality TV is so popular.
Like there was a TikTok trend where a female like in a relationship with a male would say, baby, would you be gay for like, let's say $5 million or $50 million? And the guy's like, oh hell no, I wouldn't be gay for no $50 million. He leaves, then he comes back with the wig and everything on.
Right.
And my issue with that, my issue with that is like in the straight community, they have this idea of, if you're gay, this is what gay means.
Right.
And it's like, no, like just because the person is gay, that doesn't mean this is who they are. And then when it comes to like when we talk about transgender and things like that, people have this image, and like you said, like being like tricking and things like that, like people have this idea of this is who they are. But at one point in time, yes, this is what they have to do to get by, but they've grown so much as a community, as people,
right.
And they've been being able to be, I don't want to say accepted, because being accepted doesn't matter, but they've gotten to the point where they can exist as just as anybody else. And I feel like so many of the trans community, people in the trans community they're still fighting for that existence. And instead of moving in the direction of, I'm not worried about this person, what they say was negative or whatever. It's more of, let's continue to navigate towards the negativity instead of using it as a catapult to something greater, to something better.
Well, but this is also one of the challenges that I've seen for trans women of color, trans women in general, but trans women of color. They have more visibility. They have way more visibility. However, that visibility has also brought on more harm to their community, because they're still the number one marginalized subculture or sub-community to exist.
Yeah.
Black trans women are more marginalized than Black women, and Black women go through fucking hell, especially at the hands of Black cis heterosexual men.
Yeah.
So imagine a Black trans woman going through it, not only from other trans women of color, but other trans women, gay men of color, and other gay men, or just the LGBTQ spectrum. Then they're going through it by cisgender Black hetero women, females, and white women. Then they're going through it by cisgender hetero Black men, and then white men. Yeah. So like when you and that don't include the other races and ethnicities that dislike trans folk. So when you have all this compounding hate towards you either go respond one or two ways. And we know it as Black gay men. We either our fight or flight instincts kicking.
Yeah.
And so Hope Giselle is a fighter.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones, they just flight. They just rather blend in, conform, and look and this is the most insensitive term that is used, but it's one that still haunts their community. So many of them want to look as passable as possible.
Yeah.
So that they can blend in and they don't have to worry about the negative connotations associated with being trans and being associated with being a Black trans person of color.
Yeah.
And so they get away with that.
Yeah.
And because think about it, Laverne Cox has been on TV for what, damn near 10 years now?
Yeah.
Or more.
Mm-hmm.
Janet Mock has been working in entertainment behind the scenes for how long? Mm. And now, and then you have Pose, you had Strut, which was a trans a modeling show for trans models.
Yeah, I watched it.
And like, and then you had
Legendary.
Right, Legendary, but you had Naomi was a trans dancer, trans woman dancing for quite some time since she was on ABDC, America's Best Dance Crew, with Vogue Evolution. So like she has been in the industry for quite some time, but like with all of this exposure, because you had Dominique Tyra Ross from Pose, who was then on American Gods.
It wasn't Dominique. That was
that was the one who played Tyra. Yeah, I mean Tyra, the one who played Electra. Yeah, she was on American Gods. You had Angelica Ross.
Angelica, that's what I'm thinking about.
Who's on
American Horror Story, right?
American Horror Story.
One of those.
Right. And she's been on several of those. And you've had some of the other trans women from Pose who've been in other things.
Yeah.
And so they're getting the visibility.
Yeah.
MJ Rodriguez on commercials and doing a lot of things. Like she is, her career and her spotlight is just going to new heights.
I think she's going by Michaela now, right? She using Michaela something.
Her name. And like we're celebrating and we're applauding that, but it's also still there, but they're still suffering and they're still struggling. And I think that's where hope and a lot of these more radical trans advocates are saying is that, like, although we have this publicity, although we're out there and we're getting exposure, why are we still suffering?
Yeah.
And that's something that, and this is my closing statement, that's something that any trans women, especially trans women of color watching, think about it in terms of your Blackness. We've been suffering for how long?
Yeah. The
suffering ain't gonna end, but the fight continues.
Yeah.
So you just have to learn how to adapt to fight to the generation.
Yeah. You said that was your closing statement. So so I think, like, for me, like in closing, everything that was said here, I don't want people to take it as an absolute of this is how it should be or this is how it shouldn't be, because at the end of the day, everyone's experience is different. Everyone's feelings and their thoughts on what's going on in society is completely different. So if something affects you, that's your absolute right to feel the way that you feel. Now, the only thing that I have to say is, when we fight, let's not fight against other people. Let's not fight against what somebody said. Let's fight to keep on striving forward. Let's keep on fighting to move ahead. And so it's like, when let's say we're going down a road, and on this road, it's Dave Chappelle on the side of the road. If we stop our car and we pull over and we park our car and we say, okay, I'm going to stay right here and I want to fight Dave Chappelle. I'm going to cancel Dave Chappelle. And it takes me 5 hours to cancel Dave Chappelle. That's 5 hours out of my road trip that I've wasted pulling on the side of the road to fight Dave Chappelle, because it ain't gonna get me nowhere if I'm just standing here fighting. And I think that's like, so many people think that Dave Chappelle is the problem. Yeah, he may be part of the problem.
He's part of the problem. He's not the problem.
You got to keep on moving ahead and keep going. You can talk about it. That's fine. But if you're going to spend your whole entirety worried about what he said and how he said it, then you're wasting time. And that's my thing. Like, and I'm not saying that I agree or disagree with Dave Chappelle. There's things that I enjoyed about the special, and there were some things that I say, okay, yeah, that was a little bit much. Maybe it should have been worded differently, whatever. But it was his right. It opened up a dialogue, and a lot of people are speaking about it. Should we sitting there having a conversation about it? And I just hope that people take from that the special more of a mindset of, okay, this open up some doors. Let me put my foot in the door and let me see what I can accomplish from this while I'm continuing to strive forward and move ahead. But that's my thoughts. That's my thoughts. I know like we probably can go on and on, but I know you got to go. All right. So hopefully y'all enjoyed the conversation. I definitely enjoyed it. Let everybody know where they can follow you at on social media.
You can follow me at Cashmere the Model on Instagram. That's KASHMERETHEMODEL on Instagram. I am not really on any other social media platform, and that's by choice. I rather limit it to one and not utilize the others because it becomes too much distraction and it can become problems. And so I just rather just limit it to Instagram. But I am working on bringing back my own podcast called Colored Boys, which is streaming on Spotify and Apple Music or Apple Podcasts.
Cool. So let me know when you want to have a conversation about social media. So that would be
sure, definitely.
All right. Thank you so much for taking time out your day to do this. I appreciate you.
No
so
problem.
much, brother.
We can do this all day. All day, every day.
Cool. All right, everyone. Thank you so much, sir. And we're out.
All right.
Peace.
Peace.